Hello, this is Witty. Welcome to a brief first impressions look over the Hiveworkshop Melee map, which is going to consist of a whole bunch of maps that were created for a contest. Melee maps, that is. And I'm going to go over them for a few minutes each time, briefly, just to get first impressions and give you my thoughts and opinions. So, without further ado, I was looking on Reddit, and this will be in the video description below if you want to take a look for yourself, again with the Hiveworkshop link as well. Hiveworkshop Melee Map Contest 2 concluded. Vote for your favourite maps. So basically, it's time to take a look at those maps. And some of those maps might end up making it onto the ladder, because Swamp Temple was one of them. And that made second place, apparently. And I actually quite like that map. That was one of the new maps that's actually on ladder. I haven't turned that map off. Huh. Quite a few maps get vetoed by me, but not that map. So here's the Melee Map Contest. Quite a lot of them to go through. And you can see the votes that are currently being counted. I assume that if you wanted to cast your vote, you go over to hiveworkshop.com. I'm not entirely sure how to do it though. We might find out though when I read through. But let's have a look. The Hiveworkshop Melee Map Contest. Create a competitive 1v1 map that excels in terrain, dynamic and creativity, but mostly importantly, balance. Each user can only vote once in the poll. You cannot vote for yourself. If a photo has the same IP, well, that's not going to be for you guys. You cannot create multiple accounts. Okay, you cannot bribe. Oh my goodness. You cannot invite friends to vote strictly for you. So no cheating, basically. Stop map hacking already. First prize is points, so reputation points on the website, as well as potentially actually going through onto the ladder. I don't know whether that's a guarantee from Hiveworkshop, but Swamp Temple went through onto the ladder. So here's the people that have entered and their entry. Let's have a look. Contest, judging and voting, balance. Let's have a look. My nose is going. Let's get that going. Is the map balanced for a player 1 versus 1? Are the positions and distance between points of interest fair? Does the map allow for 4 races to be balanced? Consider balance when implementing the pathing, resources, creep camps and item drops. Terrain. Is the map visually pleasing in mediums of terrain? Doodad, placement and overall theme. So is it green, basically? Is the map repetitive? Is the aesthetic well designed but not overly obstructive? Does the map bring something new or creative to the table in terms of creativity and uniqueness, as well as for bugs? Well, we don't really want any of those. 80% of the winner shall be determined by the contest's appointed judges, and 20% of the winner shall be done by the results of the public poll. So you can only have 20% of an impact by the looks of it. So the contest thread can be found here. Maybe you have to go to the thread in order to vote there. But you can download all the entries here, which I've done, and I'm going to go through those. Is this not just the thread that I opened up? I don't know. So I'm not entirely sure how you vote. If you see how to do it, then well, you're more than welcome to do it yourself. I don't even know how to do it myself, but needless to say, I'm going to be looking at the maps, not the voting aspect of it. So I'm going to load up Aridity. Hey Yink, thank you there for the sub. Oh my, okay. So what we're going to do, I think, is view entire map. So this will give us a first brief impression. Player 1, player 2. Gold mines on the side. This is really strange looking, isn't it? How does this one work then? What are there doodads? What's the terrain boundary? I assume you can't go out this way. Such a strange looking map. It's very aesthetic. It looks like Outlands. Like a more realistic look at World of Warcraft if you were to sort of zoom out in one of the zones. But I don't think this works at all for Melee at all. It's a nice looking map, but we're going to move on to the next one pretty much immediately. I think someone was just flexing their muscles in terms of sort of like aesthetic design rather than balance. Oh, now this one looks very pretty. Again, very strange doodads you might notice. You won't recognize these trees in Warcraft 3, so a fair few of these models are, well, they must be modified. They don't look like they're part of the natural Warcraft 3 style. View entire map again. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean, stylistically it looks beautiful, but I couldn't imagine playing this. Again, remember this is going to be a very brief review. I'm not going to go over every single detail, the creeps, the items that drop or anything like that. Just a brief look at the player positions, kind of. It's design. This is design at the moment, so. Certainly not balance, from what I can tell. Even though there's symmetricality in the map, I can't imagine playing it on ladder. Her Wurzel, thank you very much there for the resub. Oh, okay, so this is kind of significantly different. Player 2, player 1. So this is a bit more like Swamp Temple in the sense that it's asymmetrical. Like, one side is kind of symmetrical for both players, but then there's this sort of unique side over here and down here. So it's got a theme to it. This looks more realistic to a melee map than I've seen in the past. On first glance, I think it would pass, but I feel like if I took a deeper look, there might be issues with the map in terms of the overall positioning of neutral buildings and such between the players. And this is very bizarre over here. How on earth do you get up there? Okay, well, it looks cool. It's the most appealing one so far, I would say, for 1 versus 1, but I still don't necessarily see it happening. The expansion is quite easy and very well protected, so good for human. Maybe I should improve this map. It's a human-only map. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at Ocean Beyond, which looks like the Barrens. So, player 2, player 1. You'll have to excuse me, I've got quite a lot of pain at the moment from my toothache, basically. The irony is last night, I thought for the first time, well, I might not be feeling so well, but at least, you know, my tooth actually has stopped hurting, because when I got my tooth done 4 or 5 months ago, it took 2 to 3 months, honest to God, 2 to 3 months for it to actually stop hurting. And it flared up again this morning, so I don't know whether I self-team kill. Like, my brain just says, ah, so you're not feeling pain from your tooth, are you? Yeah, well, we'll see about that. By the way, this does not look like it's going to work. I mean, that's already altered melee because of the boatyard, so that doesn't really work on ladder. I'm looking at this more from a perspective of what I would like to see from the ladder, so don't take offense if I'm not necessarily giving the map the time that's due. I would just look at it and I would think the more likely it is to be on ladder, the more likely I am to sort of like give it a good amount of time. Okay, so Ruins of Ashara, player 2, player 1. This looks more like a 1 versus 1 map, so let's zoom back in. The middle, somewhat contested. You can hide around the buildings. It's open, but not completely open. Perhaps it should just be more open. I'm not sure if these should be removed, to be honest. I like the idea of it, and when I was making maps a few, well, almost years ago now. Not that I make maps properly, so don't ask where's your maps and all that kind of stuff. I only made a couple and I'm not too fussed about them. They're not great. But I had the idea of having like the kind of columns in the middle surrounded by a tavern, but I think it actually probably just gets in the way more than hinders. I know that you can make gameplay aspect out of it, but the trees are there for sort of like maneuvering around. This is fine if it's like one item in the ground. Okay, so player 1 starts. Nearby expansion, pretty damn easy to do. Good for human, but the expansion is somewhat close to your opponent. There's an expansion over here which is tougher, but also just as close to your opponent and much further away. This looks more realistic though. I like the design of like the terrain, the movements that you can take, you know, the different paths you can go. I like that. So this one's my most favourite so far. That one goes under Ruins of Ashara. This next map is the one that's got a lot of hype. So I'm already hyping it up by just saying that. So prepare yourself. I've not seen any of these maps before, so these are first impressions. Very unique. So, player 1, player 2. This almost reminds me a little bit of like Korea. Not the actual place, but there was a map called Korea for Warcraft 3, the Frozen Throne. It was very sort of like, or was it Korea or it was yin and yang? It was something like that, but there's two players kind of close to each other but at the same time far away. Very bizarre. This is most unusual. I'm not sure if it works though for melee. It's certainly got a lot of love though in terms of the design that's been put into it and the effort. But I couldn't imagine starting my position here and sort of like creeping. You've got 1, 2 paths. They used to make maps like this not looking like this, but in terms of the design, for like the early days of the Frozen Throne, there's also another map where both players start really far away from one another, and there's like almost a singular path that leads towards the other player. I think it's absolutely gorgeous, but I feel like this is very well suited to a custom campaign or a single scenario where you PvE and roleplay and RPG and build your character up. I can't imagine doing a proper 1 versus 1 on this. But of course, that's because it looks so alien, so I'm not necessarily giving it a proper chance, but who knows? Who knows? It could be the future of Warcraft 3 for all we know. Map design like this. Very interesting. Avoj is our next map. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. This one looks a lot more sort of standard. So we'll go to Advanced View Entire Map. Player 1, Player 2. Straight line path to one another, but you can also divert around. I like that. There's bridges, which do cause problems, but it looks like the bridges aren't a major problem because there's also an alternative path. If you didn't want to go over the bridge, you can go into the shallow waters. So that actually is pretty cool. The bridge seems somewhat pointless because of the shallow water, but I think it's more of a design thing than it is a sort of, hey, here's a bridge, but you don't have to use it. It's just like to look nice. But it also does add an extra path. The creep positions are kind of strange though. It's because they're coming out from the water more than they are guarding the gold mine, but they should still protect the gold mine. That's a pretty damn nasty creep camp. It has got a few green camps that splice into the middle. You can go through the middle, you can go around here, you can go around. There's a guy standing there. It looks pretty cool. I mean, aesthetically, I like this kind of map. It's very pretty. You can come around the sides. There's lots of different angles to come from. It has piqued my interest. I think unit balance and creep balance would be the most important thing to work out on this map. But that could be done if the map was to be taken seriously by Blizzard. They would take a look at it themselves. Not that it's too far off. It's roughly about right. But yeah, that looks pretty good. That's like up there in the top 3 for me so far of what I've seen. Okay, a much more desolate plain. We will take a look at the entire map. Player 1, Player 2, straight line, come round. Gold mines right close in the middle. I don't think this would work in ladder. It's a lot more simpler. It's a lot more basic. That's not to say it's bad. It's just to say it doesn't suit the pace of 1 versus 1. Although it does quite closely resemble Amazonia, which is similar in size and sort of almost layout design. Not completely, of course, but there are similarities, and that's on the ladder. But I don't see this making it onto 1 versus 1. I don't think that's necessarily the idea of this competition, by the way. This is my aspect. This is what I'm looking for, 1 versus 1 maps. I don't think the contest is about, these are maps designed for Blizzard's 1 versus... No. They are designed for like 1 versus 1 and balance and all that kind of stuff, but as you can see, people have taken some liberties with how the maps look over how they would play. And I think it's more about design than anything else. At least, must be maybe. Player 1, Player 2. This is a longer map. It's similar in terms of Swamp Temple, where you kind of got one brown side and one green side. That's kind of cool. The juxtaposition there. Feels like a Dota map, if anything. Lanes. It actually does look like a proper 1 versus 1 map. That's not to say it doesn't look like a 1 versus 1 map. Got the shops in the middle. Creek camps about. I could see this on ladder, but I feel like it's missing a few creep camps. It's got almost just enough, but I like a few more things to do on my creeps. So these clumps of trees, if there was somehow an extra green camp or something like that in between, because you've got big sort of power spikes, got green there. I mean, it does have kind of enough green camps, but it feels like there's too much jumping around. It's hard to explain eloquently exactly what I'm thinking in my mind when I see this. There's a long path there. It feels a little unnatural. It's not bad though by any means. It's a very nice looking map. It looks like it has the makings of a 1 versus 1 map. Just stuff would need to be done to it, and I can't really come up with everything right off the top of my head. Okay, next map is... That last map was Desert Edge, by the way, Desert's Edge. This map is Flooded Waters. We're over halfway through. So, player 1, player 2. Looks somewhat more linear. 2 pathways going into the base. I like the design with the water, but it feels like it might be a little bit too favoured against Orc players. Like, there's almost just about enough space for Orc players to move around, but there's also enough sort of like choke points for players to cause issues against larger armies. So this suits maps that are better for smaller armies than bigger armies, but that's not to say that a bigger army wouldn't do well in an area like this. It's just specific places. It's very good, actually, this. It looks like it works. I think this might be a little bit too sort of like blockaded of getting into the main base. Like, coming up through here or here as an invader would be pretty much a nightmare, I would imagine, if you're defending from this position. So the initial starting bases I'm not a huge fan of, but the sort of flow of the map and the pathways and the positions seem pretty cool. Although I think this would cause issues with aggro if you was moving a unit from point A to point B. You shouldn't really have anywhere that can sort of aggro in between sending a footman from point A to point B. Next map is Forgotten Straits. This is very reminiscent again to sort of early TFT maps. So player 2, I always see player 2 before I see player 1 for some reason. Player 2, player 1. So starting here, starting from the top, working your way up or down. This looks, again, more like a World of Warcraft map or something zoomed out. So, you've got some green camps to do, but there's a lot of space. A lot of space. Could have a clump of trees here, maybe, and stuff like that. The pathway in between is interesting, because it leads to the gold mine. It's almost a little bit too big for a 1 versus 1 map, though. I think that's where this one falls down. I could imagine this actually being a 2 versus 2 map. I'm not particularly into those kind of maps, but I could imagine there being player 1, player 2, and then same for down here. So they both players work their way from top to bottom, and they've got stuff to creep along the way. I don't see this as a 1 versus 1 map, though. Hello, they're not grubby. Next map is Login Camp. Okay, so this looks like a map. I think it's called Barons. That came out Reign of Chaos days. I used to enjoy that map, but it's super sort of basic. This one doesn't look basic as that, but it was just the mini-map reminded me more. Looking out makes the map look so much different to the mini-map. The mini-map looks horrible and brown, but if you look at this, it's actually a lot more tolerable. This kind of darker green. So, we've got a marketplace. Is this another marketplace that's kind of blocked, though? Do you have to use a zeppelin to get over to it? I guess it's kind of interesting. Most maps that have like an island that you have to use a zeppelin to get over to have a gold mine, though. It's not to say that that should be the absolute standard meta, but a lot of the cases in those situations, people still don't even actually go over to those gold mines. Even though it is a gold mine, there's a big creek camp, it's something to do, but it's so risky in 1 versus 1 at the higher level play, because as you'll know, pretty much any time you... Oh, I've got to move up from this song. I can't be doing with this one. I've heard this song way too many times. There we go. Okay. Storm, Earth and Fire does not heed my call. Okay, so looking at it, you can branch off. I don't like this, though. I feel like this should be opened up. I don't like having to decide between left and right, and then there's like this kind of feel like if you was here and you wanted to get over to here, you've got to go all the way there or all the way here instead of this kind of... You could have the option to go through. That's just me personally. Not everyone's going to agree with that. I kind of like the look of it. It's a fairly strong map, but I think I have issues with the blockades. Next map is Silverwind Clearing. So, sorry for the black, but that's when I zoom out. I'm going to go to view entire map. This looks a little simplistic, but that's not necessarily a bad thing or a slight, because those maps can actually work very well for 1 versus 1. You don't want to overcomplicate things. So player 1, player 2. Straight path between the two. Although this is like a cliff edge, I assume. You can't go there. The doodads seem to suggest that you can't go that way. So you've got this path that opens up into that path. So it's not too bad. You know, you can have blockades as long as there's still ways to get around. Like that, you know. Different places to take. It's kind of cool, actually. The design. Sort of very watery, heavy map. With only a few sort of like islanded areas. As soon as you step into the middle, it just becomes like this kind of flowing water zone. I don't mind this one too much, actually. It's somewhat asymmetrical. Tavern's here, but it's still in between the two players. So it's not technically asymmetrical, but it kind of gives off that vibe, which can sometimes be kind of cool. Because you've got like turtles here, but then one gold mine here. Instead of like gold mine here, exactly opposite. Or lab here, lab here. There's a level of difference, and I think that works a lot for more modern 1 versus 1 maps. So not too bad, that. The Screaming River is the next map. Oh my, it's a top versus bottom deal. I think this might be the first frozen map we've seen. You'll notice that a lot of the tile sets typically tend to be green, because it's just better to look at in general. People just prefer it. They might be a bit more biased like me in that sense. Well, I just prefer green stuff. Okay, so red versus blue. Looks like you can go quite a few ways, but it is still somewhat linear. I feel like if you had like 1 sentry ward here, you got a lot of map control. Because if you're coming from here, you can always block off your opponent. There's healing fountains. Most of these maps actually haven't included a healing fountain. It's somewhat awkwardly in the middle. I think I would have preferred, even though I kind of like how it's the focus, it reminds me more of a 4 versus 4 RT map style than a 1 versus 1. Having like a fountain of health somewhat in the middle of a area that is wooded off. In 1 versus 1, you typically have more of these kind of things like against the tree line. Here, you're more likely to walk into trouble. Although, there's no reason to aggro it, really, because you've got this long path here. So, unless you're actively going that way, you shouldn't really aggro it. It looks cool, though. Like the water rushing through, you come through this way. How'd you actually get across? That water looks pretty violent. Could you really walk across there? I assume you can because of gameplay mechanics, but looking at how fast that water's moving, I feel like if I sent any footmen in there, they're going to go flushing down there. Hello there, Tainted. What's up? Yeah, it looks cool, this map. I think it could serve okay in a 1 versus 1 scenario. A hell of a lot of orange and creek camps, not many green camps. There are green camps, not so easy to see in the minimap. There. Okay, yeah, no, it's got it. There's something I'm not quite seeing, though. Okay, so this map is called the Cursed Salesman. Not sure why. Maybe we'll find out. Player 1, player 2, very close path. Imagine doing a tower rush here. Damn. I mean, militia would probably run out after about 5 seconds of reaching this point. Tower rush, though. Tavern, quite close. Gold mine in between the 2 players. Gold mine on opposite sides. So this is a horrible map for human. If I had this map as human, I would either tower rush every game or just veto it. Because this is technically your natural expansion. It feels like that's going to take too long to get to. The reason why I say that is such a short distance and this is a long distance isn't because that's true. This is technically a shorter distance, but the militia time isn't so important when rushing an opponent base. You want them to turn into peasants almost in a way, so they can start building towers quicker. But by the time your militia get over here to then take on this creek camp, you're going to have a bad time. I'm just saying. That's a tough creek camp. I think it's kind of fun, this map, but I don't see it in 1 versus 1 at all. The next map is called THW Aospian Waterway. Okay. It's starting to look like a custom map, this one, just from first glance. So, we got player 1, player 2. Yeah, this definitely looks like a custom map. It's far too open. It looks fun, but I mean, I try not to be harsh or anything like that. It does not work for 1 versus 1. It just feels like someone just had some fun making a map, to be honest with you. Yeah, that doesn't work at all. Not to mention the wood issues. This next map is called Tom World. I feel like this is going to be one where you can see into space, because I recognise the mini-map style. Yeah. So, I don't know if it's got it loaded, or if you have to go into the map to see it, but you've got this kind of black... Maybe that's just supposed to represent black tar. You know, give it more of that kind of prehistoric feel. Like you're watching a movie about dinosaurs. Green camp all the way further back. This reminds me of like 4 versus 4 RT maps. I don't like these kind of things where there's a green camp here, but they're kind of like separated enough that it's a travel time that you have to take to get in between the green camps. It looks more linear, the pathing. I wouldn't play this in 1 versus 1, to be honest with you. I feel like I come across as kind of rude because I'm not given enough detail. But it's hard to come up with, like, the answers, the solutions, in a very short space of time. It's got creek camps and stuff like that, but it just doesn't strike me like the other 1 versus 1 maps have done, if you see what I mean. Like, for what I know I'm looking for in my head, flowing paths, doodads that separate, but still create a flowing pathway from one base to the other, as well as alternative routes, should you be routed by your opponent or flanked. Oh, now that is unusual. So, this is the first time I've seen this in a map where they'd actually suggest that this will be a random neutral building, is what that's suggesting, I'm thinking. So it could be a goblin laboratory, or it could be a mercenary camp or something. That would never work for a proper competitive 1 versus 1. Unless it was like 1. I don't know. I don't see it. Like, even the shops are disappearing. The layout's not too bad, though. I don't really like these high grounds that kind of have one purpose, like a gold mine or something like that, and then lean down. I think those work better for 4 versus 4 RT, but not so much for 1 versus 1. Brightwater Oasis is our next map. Okay. This is starting to look a bit like Sunken Temple. Wow. That is very sandy. Top versus bottom. You got this huge space here, which he's tried to fill with a bunch of what looks like... I thought they were murlocs at first. Very large open areas here. Spread them out just enough so they definitely aggro when you pull. And you try to get to that gold mine. Yeah. There we go. Gold mine protected. Ah, it's quite fun, but this would not work in 1 versus 1. So, I can't remember off the top of my head out of those names which was the one I liked the most, but hopefully you guys can make your own mind up and go back through the video and see what you like. And if you're able to work out how to vote on Hiveworkshop, then please do so if you wish to actually give your vote. I still actually don't know how to do it. Which is ironic because it's supposed to be about voting. Multiple votes are allowed. How does that work? Because it was saying you're not supposed to. But if I click... Maybe you have to log in. Maybe if you log in, you can actually do it. I don't actually remember what my login is, though. So I won't actually do that, but maybe that is what you have to do. So thank you very much for watching. This is the Melee Map Contest 2, which is basically signing off. So if you guys want to get in there and cast your vote, take a look at the maps yourself. There's 2 or 3 maps that I would say are definitely viable for 1 versus 1. Like Blizzard quality viable. The rest of them, not so much. Some because they're more basic, others because they're actually too complex. They're too brave with what they're trying to introduce. and I don't think you can just jump into the diving pool without being able to wade in the into the shallow pool. Okay, thank you guys. You have to log in, says Floss 2 times daily, and multiple votes mean you can vote for up to 5. Oh, okay, so you can actually vote onto 5 of the maps out of all of those if you log in. So if you create an account with hiveworkshop.com, you can come over here and log in and cast your vote. Thanks, guys. Hope you enjoyed this. If you did, thumbs up, all that kind of stuff, and take care. Enjoy. Bye-bye.